Hi, I'm Kamali, taking you through the stories people are talking about and sharing around the world on NewsFeed today. Missiles hit a Syrian airbase, a response to Friday's chemical weapons attack on Douma, or Israeli revenge for shooting down one of its jets in February. We look at the competing narratives online in this developing story. The export of livestock from Australia is a huge business for the country's farmers, but when thousands of sheep die on the way to the Mideast, calls grow for the trade to stop in the summer. A big win for scientists worried about the rise of killer robots. We'll have the details. And 50 years of a space odyssey. We look back at what Kubrick and Clark predicted. Killer AI was one of them. Well, at the top of the newsfeed, and Syria. This footage posted on social media shows either a missile or a low-flying jet. At least 14 people have been killed, and Syrian state television was quick to blame the United States, especially after tweets like this one. Well, this was President Trump over the weekend responding to the apparent chemical attack on Douma, saying it was they were going to pay a big price. But in the hours after the bombing, Israel is now being blamed. So is this part of some coordinated global response to the Syrian government's use of chemical weapons, or something else? Well, Abu Bakr has been looking at the online reaction to the news of Friday's incident.
In this day and age, a lot of people hear about breaking news through social media, and that was the case on Saturday night when the news about the suspected chemical attack in Syria broke. Now, we've been looking at some of the tweets, and this is from Athir Ali. Now, she uses an Arabic hashtag, which is Bashar hits people with chemical weapons. And then she says that she can't believe that she's sitting here on her couch, scrolling through Twitter so easily while she's looking at piles of body piled up one on top of each other that look like dolls and not human beings. That horror was also shared by Basma Attasi. She says, one of the images in the chemical attack in Douma showed an image of a baby girl that looks like mine, about the same age. Her eyes closed, froth was coming out of her mouth. I can't even imagine how her mum must be feeling. Now, the thing about images and sharing these dead people on social media, that's also been disputed. Some people think it's necessary, where others don't. So Kate Bevan, for example, here says that she's not keen on folk tweeting pictures of dead children from the awful, awful chemical attack on Syria. Don't use dead children to make your point. Whereas Danny Gold responded to that and said, this is a sentiment I've seen expressed in situations like this that means well, but is misplaced. Many people tweeting this are Syrians. These photos come from Syrians. They do not want you to look away. As for the pro-Assad side, of course, you've got some people there who are saying that this was a false flag attack. For example, Partisan Girl is a well-known pro-Assad Twitter account. She said, remember what Trump said? Never let your enemy know what you're about to do. He said, let's pull out of Syria as a deflection, so that a week later, he can declare war. He knew a chemical false flag attack was planned. Whereas those who dispute that point of view were responding that and this comes from Rami Safadi, he said, so some Assad fanboys are openly glad that Assad forces gassed civilians in Douma to death, while others blame the rebels for the attack. Can you guys ever agree on a conspiracy theory? Every time this happens, there's always at least 3 or 4 contradicting ones.
Well, let's have a look at what else is trending on social media. And Tony Robbins, a man who's made millions and millions of dollars making people feel better about themselves, was being panned on Twitter over the weekend, accused of mansplaining the Me Too movement to a victim of abuse. Take a look.
Because I just read someone the other day, very famous man, very powerful man, who's saying how stressed he is because he interviewed 3 people that day. One was a woman, 2 were men. The woman was better qualified, but she was very attractive, and he knew I can't have her around because it's too big a risk, and he hired somebody else. I've had a dozen men tell me this. So I want you to...
Well, Robbins posted an apology on Facebook. Part of it said, I teach that life happens for you, not to you. What I've realized is that while I've dedicated my life to working with victims of abuse all over the world, I need to get connected to the brave women of #MeToo. Now, one of the world's top trending Twitter terms, Ronda Rousey. This after her performance at WrestleMania 34. Now, Rousey was an Ultimate Fighting champion, but after she lost her title, she gave up the real fighting of the UFC for the fake stuff of WWE, and it seems her decision was the right one so far. And what you're looking at is apparently the latest gimmick for brides in China, standing in the middle of the room and having a veil placed on your head as if by magic, Snow White style. And here I was thinking that just finding someone to spend your life with was magic enough. Now, millions of animals are shipped around the globe yearly as part of the global food trade. One of the largest exporters is Australia. But one shipment last year went very wrong, and an Australian current affairs programme showed the video last night. Now, more than 2,000 sheep died in cramped, hot conditions as they were on their way to a number of Middle Eastern countries. The video shows the animals in distress, some near death, and workers throwing the dead ones overboard. Well, there's been reaction on social media. Australia's Minister for Agriculture said, "I'm shocked and deeply disturbed, and I thank Animals Australia for bringing it to my attention." But a senator for the Greens party went further, saying, "Time and again, the cruelty of the live export trade has been proven. It's way past time that Australia bans the horrific practice." But as Oscar explains now, that is unlikely to happen.
It's not the first time that shocking footage of animal cruelty has sparked outrage in Australia. In 2011, graphic video of Australian cattle being mistreated in Indonesian abattoirs saw thousands of Australians vent their anger on social media. An investigation by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and the animal rights group Animals Australia uncovered the cruelty, and the immediate outcry from activists, politicians and ordinary citizens prompted the government to act fast. It took just a week for officials to suspend live cattle exports to Indonesia, an industry worth more than $240 million a year. But not everyone was happy with that outcome. Indonesia called it an overreaction, saying it was unfair that the whole country was being punished for the actions of a few, while Australian cattle producers said the move would destroy livelihoods. In the end, the government backtracked and the ban only lasted a month. Judging by the figures, it's not hard to see why. The live export industry is worth more than $1.5 billion to the Australian economy each year. This time round, the Australian government has promised stricter regulations for the live export trade, but politicians have so far resisted calls for another ban.
All right, well, let's talk now to Lynn White. She's the Director of Strategy for Animals Australia. Lynn, thank you so much for joining us. Now, how can the welfare of these animals be better protected before they're sent off to slaughter?
Well, they can't be protected on ships that are being headed from the Australian winter into the Middle Eastern summer. What we're seeing year after year is that when these ships reach the heat and humidity of the Middle East, the hulls of them literally turn into ovens. And we actually have a situation where we have animals literally roasting alive in their own skins. And in terms of cruelty, I doubt that a more horrific death could be inflicted. It's quite predictable. This is an industry that has been probably the subject of a dozen media exposés for cruelty, and this is the latest to completely shock the Australian public.
I mean, someone needs to spend more money, don't they, either refrigerating those ships or trying to do something. Where does that responsibility, do you think, lie? Is it the farmers or the exporters?
Well, it's definitely not the farmers. The farmers here are outraged today, along with the rest of the community. This has been kept from them by these very, very wealthy export companies that have been doing this for 40 to 50 years. So, I mean, this is a trade basically purely about profit. And really, we have a situation now where Australia exports an enormous amount of chilled and frozen meat to the Middle East. It's really taking over from live exports. So this is an unnecessary and antiquated trade, and more people are realising this today, and there's more of a unified approach, I think, in realising that this is not good for Australia's reputation, for the reputation of our meat products either, to see the dead and the dying in the living in these ships. And I have to say that from the Middle Eastern end, they would be completely unaware of the conditions in which these animals have been living for 3 weeks before they're arriving in their destination.
Absolutely necessary for that video to bring us light. Lynn, thank you for your time. Now, Viktor Orban has been re-elected as Prime Minister of Hungary. He ran on an anti-immigration ticket and his campaign rhetoric was lapped up by voters. Sarah has been following the vote.
Well, here in the centre of Budapest, some of the opposition groups are actually holding parties. But what is it that they're celebrating? Because it looks like another 4 years for Viktor Orban and his Fidesz party. But throughout the week that we've been here reporting, we've found out that the opposition have managed to engage large parts of the population. The vote saw record voter turnouts at the polls. And as we found out with the people we've been speaking to over the last week, it's been a bruising election campaign for Viktor Orban. Take a look.
Mr. Orban, Sarah Firth from TRT World. Your critics say that under your rule, democracy has weakened in the country. What do you say to that?
I'm just standing on the basis of democracy and I'm here to strengthen it.
Mr. Orban.
All right, let's take you around the world now for some other stories you need to know this Monday. Now, on Friday, we took a look at some of the stuff that the actor Russell Crowe was trying to sell in his Art of Divorce auction. Well, he managed to make $2.8 million from the glorified yard sale. The body armor he wore in Gladiator went for 96 grand, and he also sold a leather jockstrap from the film Cinderella Man for $8,000. And there are rumors on Reddit that say it was bought by John Oliver from HBO's Last Week Tonight. But unfortunately, Rusty didn't sell everything, so did have to take some stuff back home. Now, this is a commuter train in India rolling backwards for miles with thousands of people on board. It finally came to a stop after the track started on an uphill gradient some 12 kilometres later, and railway workers placed wooden wedges in its way. And now, when you're on vacation, are you an under or over packer? Well, it's quite clear which side Mohammed bin Salman falls. This is a shot of his baggage for a 3-day stop in Paris. Now, the business team will have all the details of the trade deals he could strike in a few minutes. We just wanted to laugh at how many bags he has. Now, last week we told you about 50 scientists from around the world who are boycotting Korea's top university, KAIST, over its collaboration with an arms manufacturer. The scientists said they were concerned about the development of killer robots. I spoke to Professor Toby Walsh, the man who led the boycott, about his concerns.
It's stupid AI that I'm most worried about, not smart AI, that would be giving responsibility to machines that aren't actually capable of, that can't apply the right ethical distinctions. And that's something that's very near, a few years at best away. That's what KAIST and this arms manufacturer were hoping to develop in the next year or two.
Well, now the boycott has been called off after the head of KAIST promised not to develop lethal autonomous weapons. He says they will not conduct any research activities counter to human dignity, but hasn't said if KAIST will stop working with the arms firm altogether. The United Nations will hold a meeting on military AI in the coming weeks. Now, AI and the power of human control over machines is at the centre of Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, a movie which came out 50 years ago this week. Now, Kubrick wrote the screenplay with Arthur C. Clarke, and it was visionary. Take a look.
Good afternoon, Hal. How's everything going?
Good afternoon, Mr. Amer. Everything is going extremely well.
Alexa, what do?
I can play music, answer questions, get the news and weather, create to-do lists, and much more.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I think the development of true artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. I'm not Hal and we're not in space.
Now, as it's Monday and you're probably wishing it wasn't, hopefully this next item will make you smile. These images have been shortlisted for the Sony World Photography Awards and were taken by the German photographer Wiebke Haas. Now, she called this series Horse Style, and as you can see, most of the horses have better hair than you. So, happy Monday. Well, that's all from the NewsFeed team. Do reach out to me with your questions, comments, complaints and suggestions. I'm at Kamali Melbourne. You'll find us 24/7 on Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Follow, subscribe and add, and I'll see you again tomorrow.